to ensure that those matters are dealt with in accordance or in the manner that serves the public interest. So, in 2017, when we developed the new strategy of the Special Investigating Unit, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, we sought to ensure that every aspect of our outcomes is attended to, so that our investigations should really make an impact. I mentioned the civil litigation, which we of course control, but this part, when we set up the new strategy back in 2017, we realized that the SIU at the time was really not following through on the matters that have been referred, and not only to NPA, but also on the disciplinary side. We thought if we don't do that as a matter of business course, the impact of the SIU work will not be realized. And we raised that with the various institutions, including on the disciplinary side, various state institutions, but in particular here with NPA at the time, 2017 already. And we sort of agreed and said, no, this is an area that requires attention. And we entered into this MOU in 2017. And this MOU, amongst others, was to really ensure that the two institutions collaborate such that we are able to deal with this matter as expected by the legislation in the manner that best serves the interest of the public. And of course, respecting the domain of the NPA. And of course, it really didn't bear, the expected the results. And of course, the new leadership under Advocate Batohi came in. We then again looked at the previous MOU, and then there was a view that we need to include, the other institutions such as DPCI and SAPS, given the manner in which these matters are dealt with, right? And that's part of the efficiencies that we'll probably talk about in terms of how these matters are dealt with. So then that ended up with Annexure B, which was signed in 2022 to really continue to improve this environment of ensuring that the matters that are referred to NPA are dealt with appropriately. And I'm sure my colleagues will probably add on those. Honorable Chair, we are mindful of the time. My colleague will then conclude with the numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, HAU. Then the next slide, Honorable Chair, is just to give a summary of our referrals. In particular, we've given you like a broad numbers, disease, and administrative actions, but I will focus on the NPA referrals, and we have tracked these in terms of the financial years. So over the years, these are the numbers that we have referred to NPA. And then the next slide is actually tracking the referrals by province and financial year. So we have then dissected the numbers to give that picture and as displayed. Then the following slide, Chairperson, which is, it was an overview of then the referrals in terms of then the offences that we have referred. These are then the matters, and it relates to a number of cases, but we have broken down the information in terms of the number of offences that we have referred to the NPA as per our referral letters. Then just a summary slide, Chair. It's now we have provided Annexure C, which is now a detail on the same numbers in terms of our referrals per proclamation and per province. And the evidence that we refer, the evidence referred by the SIU to the relevant prosecuting authority Chairperson, is against a variety of persons, like it will be against companies, company directors and its employees, legal practitioners in other instances, officials of the state institutions, and we are doing this at different levels, in terms of the positions. Then in terms of then the numbers that we have provided, Chair, I think Proclamation R23, which was the COVID-19, I think it accounts for most of the SIU referrals to the NPA. And other proclamations which has the highest number of referral will include Transnet, the Deeds Office, the National Department of Public Works. It's just now the numbers. But in the main, Gauteng is the jurisdiction with the highest referrals at 1,387. And then the Northern Cape will be the lowest at 11 referrals. This is basically because we recently opened an office in the Northern Cape. Chairperson, that concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will ask for the next presentation, and I'll just ask the members to just note the presentation as we discussed before. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable members. We are going to do the presentation from the DPCI. Firstly, I just need to indicate that in terms of the delegation from the DPCI, we haven't included the one sitting at the back, which is the parliamentary liaison officers. From our office, we also have got somebody that liaises with Parliament to ensure that we have got the right person that is bringing the correct information. We have received the invite, and we appreciate that Section 17K1 of the South African Police Service Act provided this mechanism that the committee, Parliament, should effectively oversee the functioning of the directorate. So we are happy to be here, Chairperson. So that should also extend to other committees established by this Chapter 6A of the South African Police Service Act as amended. Part of those committees that we have, Chairperson and honorable members, is the National Priority Crime Operational Committee. In that committee, that is where all of us sitting here, the SIU, the DPCI, the NPA, and other entities participate. We collaborate in that space. So collaboration is one of those that is expected, that to be effective, we have to be collaborating. That entity is established in terms of Section 17, capital letter J of the law. And indeed, Section 17F dictate that we must be collaborating, working together. It is for that reason that Honorable Chairperson, you will see when the SIU is conducting the raid and other matters, we will be there with them. It is for that reason that we have got an entity in the DPCI called the Asset Forfeiture Investigation, so that they investigate and work closely with the Asset Forfeiture Unit of the NPA. And we obviously have got the environment in our space. Those that are dealing with these cases referred to us are in two components. That is the serious commercial crime investigation component, of which the component head is sitting with me here. The other one is serious corruption investigation component, which also deals with some of these matters. So, Honorable Chairperson, the matters that we are going to be presenting today constitute 2% of the work that we are dealing with. So there are many other matters that are not coming from the SIU that are referred from other environments. As an example, you'll see that we might be dealing with a few cases of COVID-19 that were referred. But if you go and check the number of COVID-related matters, we are dealing with more, because some of them are referred from other environments, including the complainants going directly to the police station to go and report. We are going to be dealing with a shortened version of our presentation, which is a 17 slide. We have submitted the detailed report so that the members can have an opportunity to see the nature of the matters that we are dealing with. We have sanitized the information so that even if it were to land in other spaces, at least it doesn't talk the names and the like. In that regard, I'm going to allow then Major General Magignani to take the portfolio committee through. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Chairperson and the honorable members. Let me just start on the outline of the presentation. The presentation, there is an introduction and the purpose. There is a slide that talks about the mandate of the DPCI, slides that talks to the cases with referrals from SIU, the cases finalized, and then we conclude. The introduction and the purpose, I may not spend time here, Chairperson and the honorable members. The National Lead have already talked about the invite that the DPCI has received to come and appraise the committee with regards to the status of the investigations with SIU referrals. The slide of the mandate, this slide, it seeks to inform the members of the committee and the chairperson about the mandate of the DPCI, that is to prevent, combat, and investigate national priority offenses. Those are the offenses that are in Chapter 2 and Section 34 of the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act. And then Section 17A of the Police Act defines also what are the national priority offenses. Then the National Lead, in his address, has already talked about the three operational components in the DPCI. Specifically for purposes of this presentation, the National Lead was clear that the cases that have referrals from the SIU flow between the serious corruption investigation component and serious commercial crime investigation component. This slide, Chairperson and the honorable members, seeks to inform the members of the number of cases that the DPCI currently is handling that have the referrals from the SIU. We have 387 cases that we have currently. There are 67 cases that are pending at court. There are 2 cases that were provisionally withdrawn. There are 105 cases that were referred to the National Prosecuting Authority for decision, and 213 of those cases are still under investigation. We do have also, Chairperson indicated to the cases that are 30, which we have finalized, 7 with guilty, and then 1 case where there was not guilty, 18 cases where there was a decline to prosecute. Withdrawn in court is 2 and undetected is 2. Declined to prosecute, that's where maybe the NPA would have felt that there is no sufficient evidence or there is no prospects of successful prosecution on the matter. This slide, Chairperson, talks to the entities that are involved in the cases that the DPCI is currently handling. From these 387 cases that I've indicated on the previous slides, the DPCI has already taken 6,518 statements that is all-inclusive, which means this includes cases at court, cases under investigation, and cases that were submitted for decision. I would also want to apologize to the committee members and chair. We have first recorded this number as 2,883. That was only the statement that talks to the cases under investigation, but in total, it is 6,518 cases. We have listed the departments and the entities where the cases come from on this slide. The charges that are there on these cases, Chairperson, is fraud, theft, corruption, contravention of the Public Finance Management Act, and Municipal Finance Management Act. The next slide, Chairperson, which is actually 3 slides, it seeks to inform the members about the cases on hand, which you have already indicated, but here we are categorizing the cases per entity or per department. Once again, Chair, I can also indicate here, as the national lead have already indicated, it doesn't mean that these entities have only these cases within the DPSI. This only shows the cases with referrals from the SIU. So the first column talks to the number of cases, and the next 2 columns indicates the court cases and their estimated values. The third, the next 2 columns talks to the cases that were submitted for decision. And the last 2 columns talks to the cases under investigation. I can just indicate on this slide, Chair, that while Department of Water and Sanitation is not leading in terms of the number of cases, but if you look into the amounts, it is the department that has got more amount that is involved in terms of the cases which have referrals from the SIU. I've indicated, Chair, that this moves to the other slide, which also shows the departments, as I've already indicated, on the cases that we have and the amounts involved. The Department of Health also, Chair, is also having a high amount involved, and the number of cases is quite high. When the SIU was presenting, they also indicate that some of the cases were at the period during the COVID-19. So Department of Health and Department of Labor, there are cases. The number includes those cases within those departments that were having the referrals from the SIU. Slide number 9, Chair, also talks to the very same departments as indicated, and the columns shows the amounts involved and the number of cases. This is the last slide on that part, Chairperson, which talks to the number of cases and the amounts involved. Let me then go to the overview of the finalized cases. We have indicated, Chair, that there are 30 cases that were finalized, 7 with convictions, 1 not guilty, 2 withdrawn from court, 2 undetected, Chair, and 18 of those cases that were nolle prosequi. Now, from slide 13, Chair, we've got the 7 cases that were finalized in court and the sentences that were imposed to the accused persons. They are also reflected on the slides. Most of the cases, Chair, without going to one by one case, there is an indication that most of the cases are those of coming from the Department of Labor. Those are the cases for the temporary employer relief scheme. That was during the time of the COVID-19. There are cases also where, like for instance, Pretoria West Central case, where an official of the municipality was convicted to 15 years direct imprisonment. And then the East London case talks to the terrorist cases, which I've already indicated. In the next slide, Chair, we have put 3 cases there. Maybe if I can indicate that Littleton case 175 of 5/22/2022 is linked to the digital vibes. One official has already been convicted there, who happened to receive gratification of 160,000 rand. He was convicted to 5 years direct imprisonment. There is also the 2 East London cases, which I've already indicated, Chair, that they refer or they relate to the TERS, that is the Temporal Employee-Employer Relief Scheme. Now, this slide, Chair, this is the last slide on the convictions, which I've already talked on. Then the slide for conclusion, Chair, I think the nationality has already touched here that the DPSI has got also other cases that we are dealing with. The slide seeks to inform the committee members that the 2 components, which is serious commercial crime investigation and serious corruption, have a total of 11,359 cases on hand. That is inclusive of the cases that we have presented to the committee today. Out of those 11,359, there are 3,139 cases that are pending at court and 8,220 cases that are under investigation. Now, this now talks to the limited capacity that the DPSI is having currently. And also, Chair, the slides also indicates that in certain areas where there are specialized skills that we may not have within the DPSI is also doing the outsourcing to ensure that the cases receive the necessary attention, and the skills that we don't have, also the members get access to them through that outsourcing. That will be the last slide on our presentation, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. This is the presentation from the DPCI. As indicated, is just 2% of the workload that we are dealing with. And I can also hint that it shall have been observed that some of the cases that have just been finalized were reported in 2010 and have only been disposed of in court. So we have got a lot of cases that are currently pending on the court roll, which is why we have got more than 11,000 accused persons that are appearing in the various courts in the Republic. Maybe I can also indicate that we are also working very closely with the IDEC, which is where we have also allocated some of our members to go and work with the IDEC until it got its capacity up to the level where they need to be. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable Members.
Thank you very much, General Libya. I just need to say again, so this is the shorter version of the very detailed document that you have. And once again, I just want to know if any of the members do not have that version. We can, I'll come to you, Honorable Dagmo. In the question and answers, we can refer to the full 100-page document and deal with the matters there. But I ask for a summary for the sake of time. So if you don't have it, please let me know so that we can make sure you do. Honorable Dagmo.
No, thank you very much, Chair, and greetings to everyone in the meeting. That was my point. I know I'm an alternate member on this committee, but we did receive the 98-page presentation and all the other, there were 6 attachments. Now, I just want to ask, was this shortened version, which has just been presented now, was that also shared with us? Because maybe I've missed it, and I'm not pointing any fingers at anyone, but it would be nice because obviously this summarized presentation is very useful, and I just noticed some different summaries that were sort of presented at the end, which were useful. But if it has been sent, I will try and locate it. But thank you. Yeah.
It has been sent, Honorable Dagmo, but for completeness, the committee secretary will send it to you specifically. Advocate Batohi.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, honorable members. This is the first time that we as the NPA are appearing before this committee, and we welcome the opportunity to do so. At the outset, let me thank the Chair for the very useful guidance that was provided in terms of how we proceed with this presentation. It's the first time we've received such guidance. We found it very useful, and I think it reflects positively in terms of the engagement with this committee moving forward. I'm joined by senior colleagues who have introduced themselves, and they will contribute to various aspects of this presentation. But before I call upon them to present, given that it is the first time that we appear before this committee, I will make a few introductory remarks on the work that we are trying to do so that it contextualizes the environment and the work that we are doing with regard to the SIU matters. I'm not going to go into detail about the constitutional mandate of the NPA and the different business units, because this has been provided separately to the committee. If we can move to slide 3, please. Thank you. I just want to, as I said, very briefly locate the work that we have done with regard to the SIU referrals. And I think just maybe to say it very briefly, as you've heard from the SIU, I think it was perhaps a design flaw that at the time, and I think the SIU at the time was established, the DSO was still part of the NPA at that time. And so there were referrals to the NPA for the DSO to investigate. But moving on, once the DSO was shut down, that's the Directorate of Special Operations, or the Scorpions, the NPA didn't have an investigative capacity until the IDAC was recently set up. So the SIU referring to the NPA, where, as you heard the SIU say, there's prima facie level of evidence, we still needed to refer it to the DPCI to ensure that it meets the criminal standard before we enroll, and that is reasonable prospects of a successful prosecution. So I think, moving forward, that's something that will have to be looked at. But now, of course, the SIU does work closely with the IDAC in the NPA that does have criminal investigative powers as well. And so, we have, as an NPA, we've really been severely impacted, like many of my colleagues, by state capture. We've been effectively rebuilding for, effectively 3.5 years, if you consider when the full leadership actually was in place in the NPA and post-COVID. So it's really from about 2021 March that we have really been able to start with the rebuilding process. And so we've adopted a number of key strategic initiatives in order to stabilize the NPA. The leadership has been stabilized. We've increased staff numbers by almost 1,000. There was a serious problem with capacity and capabilities. Capabilities to deal with serious, complex corruption is still a challenge, but we're working on that. So we increased staff by about 1,000, which is around 25%. We've established an Office of Ethics and Accountability in the NPA to ensure that we have, the highest levels of integrity in the NPA. We also have established an ethics help desk. We have been, as an NPA, we acknowledge that there's been a lot of criticism about, the pace of dealing with state capture and complex corruption matters. We welcome constructive criticism. It helps us to move forward as an organization. And, despite these criticisms, we have made considerable strides in terms of trying to deal with these matters in collaboration with our partners. And so I'm not going to go into any detail, but, as General Labia said, the work of the SIU is a very small fraction of the work that these entities do. And as SCOPA in our first one, I just want to contextualize a little bit. We have many cases in court that involve ex-ministers, various private sector actors, CEOs, CFOs, etc., with regard to key state capture matters. And because state capture relates to 0.01% of our work, but is the one that receives the most attention in the media. So we have enrolled 39 high-profile state capture corruption matters, and Beyond that, almost 700 government officials and over 1,000 private sector individuals have been convicted of corruption working with the DPCI. And now the IDAC, which was made permanent earlier this year, is really the NPA's important arsenal in terms of trying to strengthen our capacity to deal with serious and complex corruption with a prosecution-led model, as opposed to the prosecution-guided model that we work with our colleagues in the DPCI. We've also built innovative partnerships with key private sector actors without compromising our independence in order to, as the General also talked about, to facilitate skills transfer and to hire some of the best legal, forensic, and financial experts in order to deal with our cases. On slide 4, I just want to remind honourable members that prosecutions is one part of our two-pronged strategy to pursue accountability. The other important, critical part is asset recovery. And so we've re-energized the asset forfeiture unit, guided by a rather ambitious strategy and implementation plan to deal with high-profile suspects, by also prioritizing non-conviction-based asset forfeiture, focusing on organized crime, international asset recovery, and an innovative corporate alternate dispute resolution mechanism. This allows companies that are involved in criminality to pay back, but at the same time, importantly, to assist in prosecutions by collaborating with law enforcement and giving us evidence with regard to individuals within the company as well as private sector that can be held accountable in terms of prosecutions. So very briefly, since 1999, which is when the asset forfeiture unit was set up, it has frozen just over 38 billion rands worth of assets. It's confiscated and forfeited 12.8 billion and recovered 11.7 billion, of which 4.89 billion has been paid into the criminal asset recovery account, that is the CARA account, and the NPA Asset Forfeiture Unit is the only entity that contributes into this account. You may have noted that recently about 2.3 billion funds from the CARA account has been used to fund government's response to illicit mining. And of these figures that I've mentioned, almost half of it, 46% of all freezing orders, 37% of confiscations and forfeiture orders, and 44% of all the recoveries since the creation of AFU have been attained in the past 5 years, which is indicative of the new strategy that we are adopting. As I said, state capture deals with one very small aspect of this, but the second crisis we're dealing with, and which, our colleagues in the broader SAPS we work with very closely, is the crime crisis. And so, our prosecutors across the country have worked very, very hard in 3,000 murder cases per year, achieving a 77% conviction rate. We have currently 13 very high-profile gang-related matters involving 94 accused across the country, and these are very, very important aspects of the NPA work. Also with sexual and gender-based violence matters, the footprint of the Tutuzela care centers has been expanded from 55 facilities to 64. It was standing at 55 for a number of years because of the lack of funds, but we've increased it by 9 in the past 3 years, working very closely with our various partners in the SAPS, the Department of Health, Social Development, the President's GBV Response Fund, and various NGOs, and particularly with the business sector that has actually funded a lot of the new TCCs and also refurbished a number of them. We have enhanced our collaboration with the SIU, as you've heard from General Motibi, and I think the one thing we really do well with the DPCI as well is our strong collaboration also with the Asset Forfeiture Unit. A number of the figures that I mentioned is through the work of the DPCI unit that the General just spoke about. And so, we have now in the past 3.5 years been really trying to set up a fit for purpose NPA. And sadly, institution building is not something that catches the headlines, but it's really important that we leave a fit for purpose ethical NPA as we move forward. And so our focus now moving forward is to consolidate on these gains. So just giving that very broad overview, there's a lot of more detail to all of this, but that's not the purpose of our presentation today. So I'm now going to hand over to Advocate de Kock, who is the Deputy National Director of Public Prosecutions, who will take us through the rest of the presentation, and other colleagues that will contribute. And then I'll come back for a few concluding remarks. Advocate de Kock.
Thank you very much, NDPP, and thank you for the opportunity, honourable members and chairperson. I'd like us to go to slide number 8, please, of the presentation, and we will then come back to slide number 6, which is the process flow for referrals of the SIU matters. And I do believe that the committee was particularly interested in that issue. So how does this referral process work to NPA and to DPCI? But on...
Sorry, Chair, just so that just to mention, we have a number of slides, but we will not be going in detail with all of them. We will skip through some of the slides. You know, we don't have a separate presentation, but it is a number of slides, but we won't go through all of them. Thank you.
So on slide number 8...
Sorry, let me just see, this is the 60-page presentation in total, right? Or is it... I just want to be... It is?
55, I
okay.
think, thereabouts.
Just for the members to get a sense. Okay, all right.
It is one
we will summarize, Chair.
Yes.
Thank you.
No, don't rush yourself. We're still in good time. The point I'm making is that there is really lots of slides. Sure.
So on slide number 8, measures to enhance prosecutions. We talk about some of the structural arrangements that we have put in place, which are important when you work as different agencies on investigations, and the prosecuting authority has to prosecute. And so we list some of the issues on the slide. You will see some of the national structures that have been put in place. General Abeya spoke about the NPCOC. It's the National Priority Crimes Operational Committee, and that committee is critical because that is where we at a national level, across law enforcement, are able to focus our work and our resources on priority investigations, which of course leads to our prosecutions. So for example, when we talk about the FATF grey listing, and the cases that we have to manage for the purposes of our international obligations, those matters are also then located in the discussions that we have at the National Priority Operational Committee, including the serious corruption work, and the SIU work is part and parcel of the serious corruption work and serious commercial work. And so what have we done?
Sorry, may I ask, if you don't mind, it's a request for you to expand on a particular thing that for you might be familiar and you've said it quickly. So you've spoken about the relationship with grey listing by the Financial Action Task Force. Can you just please expand on that and give a bit more context on where prosecutions become relevant to the grey listing and what the grey listing is?
So thank you very much for that question, Chair. So there is a strategic action item on the action plan that's been developed for South Africa with the FATF. There's an action item that speaks to what they refer to as serious complex money laundering investigations and prosecutions. And then they want to see particular features of that. And so they indicate, in that context, they want to see who are people that are helping the criminals to launder funds, who are professional money launderers, who are professional enablers, and are the cases involving network networks of professionals. So our response as law enforcement has been that we have coordinated ourselves very well. So, and then through that coordination, we have identified collectively all of the serious, complex money laundering investigations and prosecutions that we have in the country. And so this is just but one part of the FATF grey listing issue. The action plan of the FATF speaks to many other parts, including the financial sector and the supervisory role that the financial sector needs to play within our system. And members of the committee will be reminded that the FATF, the whole action plan, is really about strengthening our response to dealing with money laundering as a country. It's not just about investigations and prosecutions. Investigations and prosecutions only arise if there's a breach within the regulatory environment, or there's a breach within certain aspects of our financial sector, or offences have been committed, and then the proceeds of those offences are then laundered. And that is where the investigations and prosecutions part come in. And so what I'm trying to indicate in this slide, through the National Priority Crimes Committee that General Beyer has spoken about in his presentation, at the national level, we coordinate all our priority work across law enforcement. And so these cases that fall within the FATF context would also feature there. But of course, all other cases involving serious priority crimes, like serious corruption, serious commercial crimes, and including serious organized crime. And so some of our illicit mining cases, and other priority offences for the country, including gender-based violence, is all dealt with at a national level. And so we get a bird's eye view as the principals of the agencies. We get a bird's eye view of all the work that we need to do, including how we have to allocate our resources and our budget to be able to do that work. So coming back to the SIU referrals then, we speak about the co-location of investigators and analysts and prosecutors. So when we work on investigations, we make a decision whether or not that investigation should be project managed. And if it is, and if it should be project managed, we try to ensure that our investigators and our prosecutors and all of those involved in the particular investigation are able to work together. And so that's what we mean by co-location. So we create spaces for our people to meet and work together. That's the idea. This helps to speed up the investigations, and it also helps to speed up our processes, where we can get to a decision to prosecute and we can get a case onto a court roll. In the presidency, there is currently an initiative to help us to track the referrals of the SIU so that there can be a more holistic reporting. We do explain in the presentation, and our Special Director Advocate Kanyani will talk to the process flow issue. But this is a very complicated process flow, because the SIU works off a proclamation made by the President. And that proclamation may lead to multiple referrals, in fact, and multiple investigations. And this has been recognized through the presidency, and the challenge of then reporting appropriately on the work. And so, and as we speak, there's an initiative to develop an electronic case management system That will help this committee, and it will also help the other committees that have oversight over the work of the police, oversight over the work of the prosecution, like the Justice Portfolio Committee and other committees. So hopefully going into the future, we will have one case management system that helps us to be able to report holistically on all of the work of the SIU. In the slide, we also just explain some of the other...
Sorry, Advocate Tikoko, I just want to ask a housekeeping issue. So everyone goes for bathroom break or whatever. Can I just ask, when we leave, can we just hold the door so that it doesn't bang each time we leave? Yeah. Sorry, Honorable Nondet, I'm not just talking to you because I know people are going to come in and out. So please, if we can just do that.
All right. So, Chair, we have also, over the last 3 years, over the period that the NDPP has referred to, strengthened our capacity and our capability within the prosecution to be able to deal with this work, the priority work I've referred to. So within our Specialized Commercial Crimes Unit and the Specialized Commercial Crimes Unit within the NPA, as the main mandate to prosecute corruption and commercial work. And so in March 2019, we had 259 officials in the unit, 204 legal staff, and we increased that capacity to currently 294 officials and 226 legal staff, meaning prosecutors, as at the end of 2024. And that has been a 14% increase. So the NPA is mindful then of how it needs to allocate its budget towards the priority areas for the country and the priority offences within the country. And this is part of our response, and the numbers indicate that. And of course, as we build the capacity, we also need to build the skills, and we need to then build our capability to be able to do the work. And thus, those partnerships that the NDPP spoke about earlier, sometimes with the private sector, sometimes with other institutions, that also helps us with building our capability to be able to do the work. Chair, I will now hand over to Advocate Kanyani to take us through the process flow slide. It's slide number 6. And she will then also talk a bit more in detail about the work of the SCCU. And of course, she has direct oversight over this work and the way that the SCCU is set up in the country. In each province,